Chavre, how are you? I hope everyone is gesund, stark, und freilich, begashmis und beruchnis. I hope everyone is healthy, strong, and happy, physically and spiritually. Today is Erev Shabbos Kodesh Parshas Chayei. So we have to understand what is the message for us from the Parshas HaShavua. As we said many times, we have to live with the time, so that means Hashem is giving us a message. And what is the main message that we take from the Parsha? As usual, since the war started, we start with tzedakah. First goes the tzedakah. Here's the mitzvah, Gdel tzedakah shemakarev sagula, Mashiach should come now, the war should end, and everyone should be healthy. We also start with a prayer, tefillah. So we're going to start with a pasuk from Tilim, Kapitel Kuf Gimel, pasuk Hey, which is about the theme that we're going to speak about today, which is aging and youth. Hamazbiya batei v'yech tischadish k'nesher nuroichi, which is translated, who satisfies your mouth with goodness, and I'm having in mind goodness primarily with Torah, so that words that come out of my mouth should be good and only have a good impact. And it should always be good, that people understand what I'm saying and take it correctly, etc. But what we're focusing on is Tischadish Kinesh Nuroichi. You're like the eagle, your youth is renewed, which means you're constantly being rejuvenated. And it's explained that the eagle molts every year. What does molting mean? Molting refers to the process of shedding an outer covering, such as a bird's feathers, which is then replaced by new growth. So basically, we're asking Hashem that we should be forever young. We should be constantly rejuvenated, revitalized, etc., etc. So it's interesting, and when you're looking for the signs and the messages, like we said, mid the Parshas Shavua, and Hashem is constantly sending us messages to absorb, internalize. So we see in this week's Parsha a central theme which covers Sarah and Avram, and we see it in 3 psukim. First, we'll start with the most famous question. Everyone knows that Rabbi spoke about this in Parshas Vayechi, but also in Parshas Chayei, that the Parsha starts with Vayu Shnei Chayei, that these are the years of Chayei, Vayu Chayei, these years of Sarah, Me'ah Shana v'Esem Shana v'Sheva Shana Shnei Chayei. So his lifetime was 100 years and 20 years and 7 years, the years of Sarah's life. So the Rebbe asked the famous question, how is it that the entire Parsha, which begins from Sarah's passing away, is called Chayei, the life of Sarah? How ironic is that? And the Rebbe's answer is that since this Parsha really talks about the climax and the values and the virtues of Sarah, so this is where, as the story of this week's Parsha, to the marriage of Yitzchak to Rivka, represents the continuation of who she is, and therefore she really becomes alive in her children, grandchildren, etc. See the sichas in many places. I don't want to get into those sichas where the Rebbe talks about that question and gives the answer. I want to just speak very general. That in other words, what comes out of it is that the true life of the person is not measured according to the physical years that they live in the body necessarily. The true life of a Jew is the spirituality. We're focusing on the soul. And therefore, as far as the soul's concerned, and this will explain a couple of things in this week's Parsha, you never age to begin with. And not only that, you could be as strong as ever. And therefore, even after you pass away, you could still be considered alive. So that's the first point. Now, Rashi also brings out over here that why does the pasuk say Me'ah Shana v'Esem Shana v'Sheva Shanim? It makes a separate listing of 120 and 7 to bring out a certain point, and then it repeats again something which seems to be completely superfluous, Shnei Chayei. And what does Rashi say? Rashi says to tell us that each one of these pockets of time is giving us a message. Nidrish la'atzmai, Bas Mea, when she was 100 years old, Kibas Esrim, she was like 20 years old. Lechet, in respect to sin, she was as pure as 100 when she was 20. Ma Bas Esrim Lechota, just like when she was 20, it's considered if she had not sinned. Shari Bas Ancient, because she's not liable for punishment. Ab Bas Mea, so too when she was 100, Belechet. And so too, Bas Esrim, when she was 20 years old, Kibas Sheva Liyefi, she was like 7 in regards to beauty. And then Rashi says in the word Shnei Chayei Kulon Shavim L'Teva. They're all equal for goodness. In other words, let's just skip to this Rashi. They're all equal to goodness. Means that with all the changes, to 127 years, it's a lifetime. Some people's biography is many volumes. So you have Sarah Imenu, the first of our matriarchs. She lived 127 years old. And there's all the different changes of life and her experiences and her difficulties and her tests that Avram lived through, that she also lived through. So, what do we say? Kulon Shavim L'Teva. They were all equally good, which the messenger said she saw the good in everything. But what I want to bring out is, she didn't get affected by it in any negative way. It was all for the good. And the reason is because they're living a life focused on the neshama. And let's speak about that for a second, because that is really what we're going to talk about today, is about aging and youth. You know, when we look into the Torah, to the Torah, and we talk about certain subjects, what I find so inspiring is how the Torah deals with real life issues and the Torah's approach to subjects, to concepts. So, for example, I'm not going to get into it now, but someone's going to ask me a question. Tell me the top 5 issues that obsess every single person. So one of them, I'll say happiness. Everyone's looking for happiness. Everyone's looking for ways to find happiness. Okay. What's the second thing? Immortality. Everyone is obsessed with aging. That's why we have the beauty industry, the anti-aging industry. They make billions of dollars of people trying to take certain medications, trying to take certain treatments, trying to get certain injections, everything to prevent aging, the aging process. So we have to look at it and we have to understand Yiddishkeit, Judaism, has a complete opposite approach. Where do we see that? We're going to see that in a second from the Pasuk, which in this week's Parsha, it also says, V'Avram Zokin bo bayomim, that he became old. But first, there's a couple of steps to the Jewish approach, to the Jewish perspective. The first approach, and the main approach, the Nekudah, the central point, where from that flows everything really, is the fact that a Yid has a neshama, and the neshama is ageless. And therefore there could be a concept of Kulon Shavim L'Teva. Not by everyone is this revealed, but by Sarah it was revealed. But the truth is, because that's really the ultimate truth. So let me read you the words of the Rebbe, L'Kutei Sichas Chelik Hey Chayei Sarah, amazing words, where the truth is that Sicha, that talk, is a very deep, profound talk, and he goes into many levels, but I'm just going to read one part. He says, since every Yid, on the part of his Etzem HaNeshama, his essential soul, is higher than the body, the Rebbe gefindt sich bei ihm on kein shum shinuyim. So therefore you can have a soul in a body, that the body is not affected by the changes of the soul. Von sind der Rega Chanel bis zu der Rega Achrein. From the minute you're born till you leave this planet Earth, there's a level of your neshama which is not affected whatsoever. Ken der Fargimol sein, therefore it's possible, as by divas the etzem and neshamas by zemeir begilui, so that by those that the essence of their soul is shining and illuminating in a revealed way, soll sie wirken, it should impact and affect a heder ashini, a lack of change, oich of zeire koiches hagiluyim and guf, also on the revealed faculties on the body. So in other words, the ultimate tzaddik affects that the superiority of spirituality, the lack of limitations of the spirituality, could also permeate the physical. And therefore in the physical there's no change, and kulon shavon l'tova, they're all good. That the person is on full cylinders, full force, go, 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 because he's primarily tapped into the essence of his soul, and the soul doesn't have the limitations of the body, and that's how we're measuring the person. That's how we look at the person. There's a fantastic video of one of the Israeli beauty contestants went by the Rebbe, by dollars. And you see also over here what it means, the holiness of the Rebbe. And if you'd ask somebody, what would the Rebbe tell an Israeli beauty contestant? She's coming from a totally secular world. You couldn't think or imagine of someone who's in a completely different planet and world than the Rebbe's world. What did the Rebbe tell her? The Rebbe told her, Sheker achein vehevel hayofi, isha yiras Hashem itisal, that beauty is false and vain, and the true beauty is a God-fearing woman. But then the Rebbe added that the outer beauty, or your outer beauty, should reflect your inner beauty. Which means that, truthfully speaking, someone who's beautiful on the inside, by true tzaddikim, like it says about Sarah, like it says about Esther HaMalka, the external beauty of the physical body was a reflection of the internal beauty. The soul dominated. The soul was superior. And because the soul was superior, that superiority also expressed itself in the body. That's the point. So now, let's recap. How does Judaism look at aging? Judaism looks at aging because we start with the idea of a soul. Everyone has a soul. And what's the measure of a man? The measure of a man is not how many pounds he can weightlift, or how high he can jump, or how strong he is physically. The measure of a man is his soul, his virtues, his values. And this is the story of Yiddishkeit, as the Alter Rebbe explains in chapter 32 of the Tanya, Oisam nafsha maker v'gufam tfeila. The life of a Jew is to make the soul the priority. Spirituality, kindness, compassion, caring, love, etc. The body is just the tool and the instruments which carries out those values. Or in different language, in different words, that Chassidus says, Hagbaras hatzura ala chaymer. See the soul over the matter. Literally, tzura means form, but it means the spirituality over the physical. We're not materialistic. We don't focus on materialism. We focus on what really matters, the spirituality. Just like, and for example, just to give you, what does it mean when we say, Hagbaras hatzura ala chaymer? A good example is from art. What's a painting? All the mashpim speak of. You have a painting. How do you look at a painting? What's a painting? You could look at a painting that it's a canvas. It's a certain material. On this material, we take paint, which is different colors, which is different liquid, a liquid of many colors, and then we pachkayin and pachkayer and pachkayin and pachkayer, and we have something. Is that the definition of art? Of course not. What is art? Art is Hagbaras hatzura ala chaymer. We took certain matter, certain materials, canvas and liquid, and we brought it to life. And from that we made life. Now we can look at this liquid, and we can look at this canvas, and be touched and moved in the deepest ways possible that makes me a better person, which ultimately brings huge benefit to mankind. Imagine. And what inspired me and touched me and moved me so deeply that now I became a changed person, some liquid and some canvas. And that's what it means, that we take the physical, and this physical now is not physical, it becomes spiritual, it becomes a conduit for a message for a lesson, for a teaching. That's an example of what it means, and the same ways that we have to look at life. So now, that's the first point, and now we understand what it means by Sarah, as we explained, Kulon Shalom L'Tova. And this also gives, in general, by the Rebbe, old age was cherished. And really, it starts from the Torah. For a second, you know what? Let's go to the pasuk, and then take a pause for a second, and then we'll talk about the Rebbe's approach to old age and retirement. Actually, this is the second place where we see this theme. That's why I said the message of this week's Parsha. That Sarah is 127 and she passed away, and we say she's alive. Avram Zakin Baba Yamim. The pasuk says in chapter 24, the first verse, Avram was old, coming in his day, and coming in days. Hashem berech Avram Bakel, and Hashem blessed Avram. There's so many commentators on this verse, but we're not going to get into it so much. First, I want to read to you a translation. There's a Gemara in Sanhedrin, and it's a Medrash Tanchuma, and it says like this: Avram was the first person that his age registered on his face, on his body. Hashem was praising Avram, saying, "You're beautiful." So Avram said to Hashem, "Where is my beauty? I and my son enter a city, and people do not know who is the son and who is the father. So it's a problem. You don't know who to ask a question, because experience brings wisdom. There's no authority, there's no respect. Everyone looks the same." So Avram tells Hashem, "You must distinguish between young and old, so that the old be honored by the young. For until Avram's time, a person would live 100, 200 years and would not age." This is what the pasuk comes to teach us. The Gemara and Medrash brings out. V'Avram Zaken. He was the first one who aged. He became old. Said Hashem to Avram, "By your life I will begin with you." When Avram awoke the next morning, he saw that the hairs of his head and beard had turned white. Said Hashem to him, "White hair is a crown of beauty. White hair is the splendor of the old." Thus it is written, Avram was old. Avram Zaken. So we see that according to the Pashta Pshat, the simple meaning of the Medrash and the Gemara, Avram Zaken is a blessing. What's the blessing? The blessing is that you look distinguished. You stand out because of your age. So therefore it's recognizable that you're wiser. And for this reason in Judaism we also have the mitzvah, V'adarta pnei zaken neiseva tokum. You meant to rise for an older person, you meant to have respect for an older person. And the answer is, like the famous saying in Yiddish, Elter kliger frimmer. Older, wiser, and more observant. We say, Mashiyasa Zman, lo yasa seichel. What time will accomplish, intellect cannot accomplish. So now let's take it to a practical consequence, result, implication. There's many stories with the Rebbe that it's actually humorous to see the Rebbe's response, where the person comes to the Rebbe and says, "You know, I'm already 75 years old, I'd like to retire." And the Rebbe says, "Forget about retiring." And there's so many videos like, forget about it, knock it out of your head. By the Rebbe, the word retirement was not in his vocabulary. There's two famous talks of the Rebbe, Fabrengens. When he turned 70, when he turned 80, he spoke about it. Yud Aleph Nissen. That people tell me I should slow down, I should relax. On the contrary, when you turn 70, you have to look at yourself and ask yourself, what did I accomplish? Till now, I have to accomplish more. So the foundation of the whole thing is based on the fact that we have a soul. And this soul doesn't age. The fact is the body does become diminished. So, like I said before, it's a sign by the Eibishter that sooner or later, your mission is over. The Rebbe once told somebody, I forgot the details, I'm just going to get to the punchline. There was a family that they lost a relative and they couldn't get over it and they were mourning. So there's many stories like that. The Rebbe's answer in such a case was usually, number one, the soul of your relative wants you to stop mourning. It's not good for their soul. That's one point. And the other point is the Rebbe once told the family, the soul leaving this world, imagine if your grandfather used to live on the first floor, and now he's living on the second floor. He just moved residences. He moved his address. That's the only difference. Before he had a mission on this planet Earth, and now he just moved. But as far as the soul is concerned, it's doing what it has to be doing over there, etc., etc. So this is the Jewish perspective. So therefore, when it comes to aging, on the contrary, like the Gemara says over there, it was a blessing to start with, that we age. And the point is that it should be recognized that you have acquired experience, deep-wired knowledge that makes you ahead of other people. This famous, Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, which talks about learning from an older person, learning from a younger person, etc., etc. So again, the point is, how do we measure man? Do we measure man by his physical prowess, his physical strength, or do we measure man according to his values and virtues and spirituality? And that's the foundation of the Jewish perspective. And the Rebbe came out with something called Tiferes Zakenim Levitzah, which was full-time studying and learning. Tiferes Zakenim means the beauty of the older people. He made a special all-day learning program, or whatever, depending on each person, for people to go to when they came to the next stage in life, where for whatever reasons, maybe their business got rid of them, or they were employees and they were told, you must retire. In some countries, it's mandatory. So the Rebbe set up a whole program around the world. There's something called Tiferes Zakenim Levi Yitzchak, named after the Rebbe's father, where people that were older would go study Torah in a kollel. So again, such a revolution. It used to be that when we look at the kollel Jungel Light, those are people that just got married, and they have a dowry, and they're able to sit and learn for a couple of years. What does the Rebbe do? The Rebbe makes a revolution, and he starts a kollel that's for older people. Because just because they're older, they're not less valuable, they're not less important, they're even more important. And they can continue sharpening their intellectual capacities, and they can bring great benefit. Okay, time is really running out, and I really originally wanted to talk about the pasuk Vavram Zaken Baba Yomim. So it's a Sicha in Chelik Lamed Hey, and I'm going to tell you my take. Not everyone understands it in such a way, but this is my interpretation. The Rebbe asks a question. It says in the pasuk Vavram Zaken Baba Yomim in this week's Parsha, but guess what? It was already mentioned before in Parshas Vayera, in Kapitel Yud Ches, in Pasuk Yud Aleph, it says Vavram v'Sara Zakenim Bayim Bayomim. So why is it repeated again over here? And the Rebbe says something which, for me, was so inspiring to see this word. The Rebbe says the nature of a person is the older that they get, the more burnt out they get, the more everyone says he's mellowed. You know people. You, the one I'm talking to right now. So, you have acquaintances. When they were young, they were full of energy and fire and spirit. But then they get old. And what does it mean to get old? They have an attitude, I've seen this already before. My Mashpir Rabbi used to say about people that were always talking about the olden days, we have to eradicate all those that like to talk about those were the days. My friend, the word Amalek represents Amalek, a nation spelled with an ayin. In Yiddish, the word Amalek, spelled with an aleph, means used to be. In the olden days. Amal, it used to be. So why? Because there's people that they're not living fresh. They're not really alive. They become stale. They become indifferent. They become disengaged. So this is the Rebbe's pshat. Listen to this. In the previous parsha, where it says that they were old, was 37 years ago. Before, when they're about to give birth to Yitzchak. This week's parsha, Vavram Zaken Baba Yomim, is when Yitzchak's already 37 years old and he's 137 years old. So the Rebbe learned Pshat Baba Yomim means then They used to go into the days. They go into the days means they're living life to the max. They go into it totally. Engaged. You know, there's a horse walks down the street. What happened? He looks here, he looks here. He's not experiencing it. But a person who's alive, he experiences every single day to the max. And everything that happens in his life, he experiences. He's in the moment. Somebody said, Tofshin Pei Tehei Shnas Poi. They're totally present in whatever is happening. So there's no just a thing that's just passes over them and makes no difference. They're involved. They're immersed in it. It's the immersive experience. And that's what it means to be young. And that's what it means to be alive. They didn't become jaded. They didn't become sarcastic. So why does the pasuk repeat it over here? The Rebbe learns Pshat. That was the meaning over there, Baba Yomim. So over here, the pasuk is saying that this was the bracha. Avram Zaken, it's even 37 years later, and he's 137, but still Baba Yomim. He didn't lose his passion. He didn't lose his fire. He didn't lose his energy. He still goes into every single day. Ba Yomim. He goes into it totally. Not like an old man, but like a young man. And that's why the pasuk can say it again, because even though it's already 37 years later and he's 137 years old, still it's Baba Yomim. But what does the pasuk of Avram Zaken mean? There's a bit of a paradox, because on the one hand we say of Avram Zaken, it was recognizable that he had aged, because when you live life to the max, and every single event, every single happening, you experience totally, so it takes its toll. There's a wear and tear. And that's what it means Avram Zaken. But nevertheless, the blessing was Avram Zaken. After all the adventures and after his entire life, he still faced every single day like a new man, totally going into it. With his previous experiences, but he came with his totality, and therefore he looked like he'd been aged gracefully. But it did take its toll. But nevertheless, he's still living life to the max. And that's the blessing, Baba Yomim. And this is a message to us how we have to live life. And it's also connected to a third pasuk over here, where Rashi says that when he gave Eliezer the instructions of getting the wife, so Rashi says that he gave him the shtar. The pasuk says that VaYochailu the Asar Gemalim, he took with him 10 camels. Pasuk Yud in Kapitel Chavdal, and he says, "V'chol tuvadeinav biyodei." He took Avram's entire possessions, and Rashi says, "Shtar matona kosel Yitzchak kol ashaloi," so that it should make an attractive shidduch. The Rebbe in Tafshin Bey spoke about it, that this is also a sign. Avram is totally vested in it. He knows the whole future of Klal Yisrael is based on this shidduch. So in other words, imagine we're talking in the news that we have a merger of 18, I don't know what, Google and then Facebook and then, I don't know what, Time Magazine and then New York Times. It's a $1 billion merger business deal. And Avram is the CEO of the company. And he's still involved in all the details. And this is what we see in this week's Parsha. In another place, the Rebbe says that this is a message concerning parenting. Parenting never ends. Parenting never ends. Parenting never ends. You know, sometimes you have parents, and it's mutual. On the one hand, you tell yourself, is it ever going to end? Do I always have to get involved? You know, when could I just say enough? I did enough already. Number one. And number two, maybe you could think to yourself, I don't want to mix into my child's life. He's married. He's an adult. He has his own, opinions. So from this story, the Rebbe says we see both things are wrong, are not like that. Number one, parenting never ends. You could be 137 years old, like Avram. And Avram Zaken, Baba Yomim. He's still totally vested, committed, and involved. And not only that, in all the details, as he spoke to Eliezer. And he puts everything into it. And he's mixing into the shidduch of Yitzchak. So obviously, my friends, you have to have brains. Today is a different generation. But we're meant to mix in. I'm using that word with italics. Mix in means your job is never over. As a grandfather, as a parent, you could always, with seichel, make a comment, make a suggestion. Be careful, I'm saying. But understand that as far as your job description is concerned, we learn out from over here, parenting never ends. That's one of the messages. So this is the message we get, both from Vayu Shnei Chayei Sarah, what it means to make spiritual superior. And we see from Avram Zaken Baba Yomim, what does it mean to stay young? That you live life to the max, you're totally involved and immersed, and you're present in whatever's going on in your life. And it also means concerning your children or your grandchildren, that you're still involved in one way or another. So my blessing to you, my friends, is that every single one of us should stay young, and be able to fulfill their shlichus in serving Hashem and making this world a better place. And through us making this world a better place, the Eibishter will do our job, to make this world a dwelling place for Hashem, and this will bring about the Gula Mitzvah Shleima, taken from Yad Mamish, posting from my home, your man in Melbourne, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarich, posting from my home, Be'ez Hashem Yisbarich, your man in Melbourne.